Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Here we go with tensiometers. And I thought I'd explain a little bit before I get started, how we got here. So I'm not sure how exactly Kate did that at the beginning, but way back in December, Sarah had some extra money and she thought, well, let's see if we can figure out a good, useful way to do it and use it. And somehow I was in the meeting, the initial meeting, and it was like a Zoom BS session in a way. We were just going around the circle trying to figure out what types of tools we use in our offices that other people might like to use in their offices. And so somebody started out with hay probes, and somebody started out with, next person might have gone with a soil probe and kind of worked their way down. I think that was almost the last one, Kate, I really do. And I thought, man, I got to come up with something here. And what popped in my mind was soil moisture measuring device. I've used this. This is a watermark monitor, and it's just a data logger for these, which are gypsum block watermark sensors. And I'd used these products in a previous study, was about 2 previous studies, and we used them primarily season-long soil water monitoring, and we put them in at 6 inches, a foot, 2 foot, and 3 foot, 4 foot. And then we had a season-long data log of soil moisture at those levels throughout those 2 projects we had. So they were useful in that way. We didn't really use that data that much, but it was more like just kind of a guidance background data for the projects. And then recently we've had some meetings with small farmers, small acreage farmers, market gardeners, and they talked about their history of their businesses, and several of them mentioned the fact that one of the hardest parts was dialing in their irrigation system. And so that started me thinking about tensiometers. Now, I'm probably the worst person to talk about tensiometers in a way. I've always not bragged, but at least joshed the people in Southern Idaho that 2 worst things I could be would be a dairy farmer and an irrigator, because I'd have to do that like every day, right? And it's the same thing every day. And everybody knows after Annie's project, I'm an orange and I don't like doing the same thing every day. But still, I think there's a lot of potential with these instruments for not only for users. So particularly, I'm focusing more towards small farm market gardeners and master gardeners, I think even, but also as a training tool for master gardeners and in soil classes and with different groups, just to demonstrate the whole idea of soil water tension and what that relates to soil water availability and root growth. And a lot of times another, getting back to Josh in the Southern Idaho, where they're depending on irrigation, and we're rain fed mostly here, but still, soil moisture is our limiting factor in production every year, almost every year in every crop up here. So when you look at a small farmer, market farmer, if they can maximize their production through accurate soil irrigation, crop irrigation, that's really important. Not only they can be first to market, they can be faster to market with more quality crops. And so it's a very important thing. So I think we have some opportunities here. That's how we got here. I do have just a small slideshow or a PowerPoint just to give you something to look at while I talk a little bit about these. Oh, and I also want to say, like Kate, I enjoyed last week's give and take, and I'm really depending on the Southern Idaho expertise to come in here and straighten out the whole topic. So I'm gonna do this slideshow. Let's see if I can do it right. Is it showing there? yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I guess I have to share my screen, right?
Yep.
How about now?
Yep. It's showing.
Okay. So, like I mentioned, I used these watermarks originally, just for, and they're available. They're just kind of pricey, but they do a good job. There's some give and take on those. I don't really want to discuss those today, but that's kind of how I got interested in using water monitoring devices. Let's see. So you know, we're talking about irrigation. I'm certainly not an expert in irrigation, but I do know enough about it to know that it's a balance. And really, we're not only talking about irrigation, but rain-fed systems, that it's a balance between having enough water so that the plant never reaches a point of water stress. And so that's accounting for plant use and evaporation on one hand. On the other hand, so that we don't have too much water so that we reach a saturated situation, then really shuts down the roots, and also you have leaching potential and such. So it's that balance that we're trying to reach. And I think tensiometers are a good tool for measuring soil water potential. They do it by measuring the tension, the water tension in the soil, and we'll talk about that in just a minute.
Hey, Ken.
Yeah.
I have one thing to add on this about that, using the soil tensiometers. Almost all the field reps use these in our area. And in fact, my son, that's what he did for a job last summer, is over there in Grace, Idaho. He installed all those and checked them all summer. And the reason why they use them is because, for the most part, it doesn't matter what the soil texture is. That suction coming out of that ceramic cup is gonna kind of read kind of what the plant roots are going to experience. And a lot of these other sensors, you really have to calibrate them for each different type of soil texture you have. And that's where I feel like the real benefit, I mean, really makes it beneficial.
Yeah. Thanks, Reed. And I'll touch on some of that again. Reed mentioned that porous ceramic tip you see on the slide there. So what that ceramic tip, it's a clay ceramic tip, and it allows water to go back and forth, but not air, up until you reach a certain pressure setting. It won't allow air, so it allows water to move back and forth. Just a vacuum gauge on the top of it. What you'll be getting, by the way, is in the mail is this one here, if you can see that, and that's a 24-inch soil, what do they call them? Anyway, a 24-inch tensiometer. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. A water reservoir at the top of the tensiometer, and they vary by company. I've got two companies here, and we'll, the design is a little different by company. And then the tube length is based on whatever type of crop you're trying to measure the water tension with. I think the reason to use these things is that they're relatively inexpensive. They're about, these two back here, they run about, $85 to $100. On the last slide, I've got a link for a paper that shows you how to build one out of PVC pipe for about $55. And you might, if you need a number of them, that might be the way to go. These commercial ones are a lot easier to operate, I think, than a homemade one would be. Okay, there. So this is just if we can use a tensiometer. I mean, if we go by eye or we go by experience, sometimes we're just estimating, and we're too late. On the left hand of this slide, we're too late to maintain that the the capillary water in the between the pores of the soil in the middle, and we get to the left-hand side past the wilting point, and then we have to react to that, and we've already lost yield. We've already lost quality on those plants. On the other side, you can see if we're putting too much water through, we're wasting money, we're wasting water, and we're wasting nutrients, and we're impacting the root quality of the plants. So anyway, so what it does, what the tensiometer does is it measures the it's a reflection of the amount of energy the plant will have to expend to get water out of the soil system. It measures the tension, the tension of the soil holding the water. And what Reed said is pretty much true across soil types, although the pressures will be a little different across soil types. But because it measures like the tension in the water system in the soil, it is reflective of how much energy that the plant's going to have to do to get water out of that soil system. It's the units of measure are normally in centibars or kilopascals. Most people use centibars. A normal gauge, vacuum gauge, runs 0 to 100 centibars. The gauge that's coming with your one from this project is 0 to 50, which is more suitable for lighter soils, typical of southern Idaho. But it also will work, since most of the cutoffs on irrigation levels for crops are lower than 50, then it'll work for most crops. But if you'd like to get the other kind of gauge, you can order that, and they'll swap back and forth easily on these tubes. But this will work fine for demonstration purposes as well. So that's the measurements. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so then the way the thing works is basically inside that cap, inside that ceramic cup, you have water. And in mine look green because they encourage you to use a coloring agent that also resists like any kind of fungal growth in your tubes. So it's a coloring agent and kind of a purifier. And you can also see in these clear ones, so that you never want to get air in the top of your tubes, and water does disappear. But anyway, so in the bottom of that cup, you have water, which essentially is like a saturated soil system. There's no air in the cup. On the outside, you've got the soil system with air, a certain amount of air, unless it's a totally saturated soil. And so there's going to be movement from that water from the cup out to the soil system, and the movement causes a vacuum, which creates a reading on the vacuum gauge. And that's how it works. It's a really simple thing. They've been around since the 40s, 50s, been in constant use since the 50s. Of course, like everything, we've got really good materials to work with these days. We don't have to use glass ones. We've got really good materials, and they make more quality instruments. But the basic principle has been around for quite a while. So you can see in this slide that you see the water on the right side of this picture in the soil solution, suspended in those air pores, or in the pores. There's water in those pores. And then the middle wall there is an idealized picture of what the wall of the ceramic cup is. And then the water, a full water solution with no air on the inside. It's really important to remove air on these tools, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how to do that. Site selection is important. This is a sampling tool, just like soil sampling tool. It's a sampling tool, so you know it's really important to place it at a typical location. So avoiding low wet spots, avoiding high and dry spots is important. Keep it in a typical rainfall or irrigation situation. So if, you know, based on the situation, and there's a lot of different crops, a lot of different irrigation types, but just for example, you know, if it's a tree, then you want to be basically putting these out on the drip line of the tree. And it's important to keep in mind root zones. So this should be placed in the rooting zone of the plant. So if you're looking at sod or bedding plants, vegetables, they should be in about 6 inches, about where the cup should be, about 6 to 8 inches at the most. And for trees, for example, you probably need 2 of these. You need a deep one and a shallower one. So the deep one might be 24 inches, the shallower one might be 8 to 12 inches. And with 2 of them, the deep one, the shallow one tells you when to turn on water, the reading from the shallow one. So in other words, it's dry enough to turn on water. And then the deep one tells you when to turn off water, when the deep one gets to the vacuum setting where it shows you're watered up. So that's how you might place them for trees. Different types of irrigation, I'll just mention an example. So furrow irrigation, it should be placed about 2/3 down the furrow run, and then it should be placed in plant proximity to the root of the plant, so that you can see whenever that drying takes place, it's time to water. So, you know, these irrigation decisions that need to be made, rather than seat of the pants or rather than taking a long time to adjust our systems, this tool could give us a much shorter time to adjust our systems, because each crop does have a different range. You can use, maybe if you, like Reed says, where these are widely used in southern Idaho on field crops, you could use what's, you know, commonly accepted as local standard, you know, for a vacuum setting, or for that vacuum reading from the tensiometer for that particular crop and soil type. Otherwise, you can calibrate these things pretty easily for your own situation, as long as you get a good location. You know, you have an adequate number of tensiometers to reflect, you know, the standards or the sampling area that you're trying to cover. And then just water that up, water your system up and observe it. And then when you see plant stress, that gives you a good indication. You wouldn't want to do this every day. You just want to do this once. But when you see plant stress on that particular crop, so let's just say you saw plant stress, for example, at 60 centibars, then you'd want to avoid that plant stress and maybe water when you reach 50 centibars. You could develop some local experience on that, but this will be variable based on soil type, the plant type that your crop, your desired yield and quality, you know, your budget, because water's not free and water's not everywhere. So not only your crop budget, but your quality budget is important. Okay. Okay. So I want to show you, well, let's see here. I think I have, that just shows some of the parts of the, sorry, drop my, okay. And then the last one is, these are just 3 websites that are papers that are really pretty good. The first one is called Using Tensiometers for Measuring Soil Water and Soil Scheduling Irrigation. And it's from Hawaii, but it's a really nice, quick little publication, leads you through much of this and how to use them. The second one is how to place them in horticultural situations. So how to install them in market gardens, and working with your master gardeners to train them on that. And then the final one, the last one there, is about how to build your own tensiometer. I guess I ran some little numbers on it, and depends on how many you build, but about $53 a piece is about what I got for it. Okay, I guess my time's almost up. How am I doing, Kate, for time? I left my watch at Hot Springs, and I don't have a watch for the last 2 months.
Oh, we're a little behind, but that's all right. Oh, wait, no, we're not. We're just fine. 10:15 is when we have a break, and it is 10:03, so 10:06. We have time for questions, so go ahead.
Can I show? I would like to show these tensiometers. So this one, I've got 3 soils in this box. I've got a Chemist Prairie loam, which is really wet, and a Salmon River sand, which is pretty wet for sand. And then I mixed it half and half in this container here. The sand one, basically, as soon as I put that tensiometer in there, it popped right up to about 10 centibars. Sand's really porous, the water disperses pretty fast, and so it's really, you know how it is. Sand dries out really fast. This one, it takes about an hour and a half to get a reading. When it's, this one I think is pretty saturated because it's been in here for an hour and a half. I'm gonna watch it for the next couple of weeks. I didn't even try this one because it's really wet, but as soon as this sand one dries out, I'm going to put that one in there and just kind of monitor it for the next week or so, just to get an idea of how they work here. You'll want to get, if you're going to use these things, you'll want to get a kit. It's an accessory kit. It includes, well, for one thing, you want to have a bottle like this type of, some type of bottle with a narrow orifice, so you can, they're really hard to fill, and you really need this to fill the things. And then you need to order an accessory kit. The iron meter is the one I ordered, which is this particular tensiometer. And the one that's coming to your office, they're going out in the mail today. They have another kit, but it's basically the same stuff. It's a vacuum pump. There's a primary thing in there, and the vacuum pump is in order to remove air. Air is a real problem in a hydraulic system because air compresses and water doesn't. So you need to get all the air out, and the vacuum pump pumps all the water out. You pull it, you basically pull the water through this column. I had more trouble getting the water out of this long column than I did on the short column. I still not perfect. You can see it, I don't know if you can on the picture, but you can see a few of the droplets I didn't quite get out yet. Anyway, that's so far what I've done with it, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about these items. Thanks a lot.
I wanted to ask Ken, when you order this, does it have a list of like the numbers of like how to interpret that data? Because you were saying, you know,
you know, they give some general guidelines based on soil types. So, you know, a loam type of soil, you know, they base it on about a 50% soil moisture. So they kind of tabulate that, so it gives you a starting point. And you can also find some of those in publications for specific crops or
yeah, you mentioned that earlier. Yeah. So when you're working with the master gardeners, like, and just like diversified like garden, does it give you like a number of what that would be? Because if you're doing lots of different crops in like a smaller plot.
you would take your most, if you're in a market garden situation, you'd take your most water susceptible crop. So,
Oh, okay.
you know, and you schedule your irrigation based on that crop.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ken, this was great information. A couple people are asking about ordering instruments or exchanging ones they got that weren't what they thought or something. So just email Carmen and myself, and we'll see what we can do. And
Okay.
we'll also post some of the websites. Where I got the tensiometers, the guy worked with us when I told him what we wanted it for. So I hope these are useful ones, but it sounds like it may not be the best for Palouse soils, Ken, if it's only goes from 0 to 50 or some other heavy soils.
Yeah, that was my fault, Kate, because Kate kept asking me which one to order, and I had some stuff going on. I didn't respond to her quite, but it's actually great. They call this the Florida version, or the, you know, it's up to 50, and it'll work for most crops. But I don't know, you might be, if you haven't used it, I mean, it would be you mainly, Kate, because I think most of the rest of them were heading down southern Idaho. You might be able to just send back that one gauge and just trade them gauges, you know, because that's the only difference, really. Well, I don't know, the tip might be different as well.
Well, I actually was thinking about that, and the soils here are nothing like the Palouse. There's lots of sandy soil, and so I was thinking see how it works. If it doesn't work for here, I'll see if somebody needs one.
Well, these ones go up to 50 centibars that the people are getting. They don't work. Tensiometers don't work past 85. When you get to 85, they pull air in through the cup, and so you know they don't work up to 100 anyway. Anyway, and most crops you don't want to get past 50 before you're gonna replenish water in. Now, Reed or somebody might correct me on that, but that's my understanding.
Well, I will say this, Ken, is that at Potato School, if you can get the videos from Potato School also, they did this just a couple of days ago, had a great presentation that I watched on all the different types of soil moisture sensors and the costs and when they work the best and when they don't work the best. And I'm sure that each one of us could go on to Potato School and see those videos later. If you really, really want to get into all the different kinds, they just had one of those presentations at Potato School.
We actually use the watermarks on our research project because they're sensitive up to about 200 centibars. Yeah, thanks, Reed. That sounds good.
Maybe you can send a link to me, Reed, and we'll get that added to the website. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was Potato School, and you know, I'll have to. It wasn't a guy that I knew that gave the presentation. It was one of the potato researchers up on campus that I didn't know very well, so I'll have to research that out.
Great. Yeah, and Ken, thank you for diving into this. I was thinking you said that you left them in the ground on your research plot?
Yeah, all season long, the watermarks, yeah. And these when you place these tensiometers, they're for the season. You have to maintain them, so you've got to make sure they don't run out of water, but it's basically a weekly at the most type of check. If it you know, based on the soil types and everything, sometimes you wouldn't have to check them like every 3 weeks or so.
Okay, fascinating. Well, you know, amazingly, we're right on schedule. Take a 5-minute break as we switch over to Iris's presentation on the smart flow meters.